Welcome into Basketball by Association. My name is Association, joined by Mr. Basketball over there, Joel C. Cordes. Joel, I want to get straight to it, because I am I'm at a loss for words, and I really don't know. And I've thought a lot about this over the last 4 days or so.
Let's just pause for a moment and say it takes a lot to make Arky Shea be at a loss for words. So we know this has to be serious. This has to be serious.
Joel, I don't know what to do with the All-Star game.
Join the club.
Like,
sounds like that's everybody's thought.
First of all, I wonder why it took so long to get to 200 points for a team. Finally, they did it, so there's no joy in that anymore. I just don't know. There's nothing. Okay, let me just ask you first. Can you say anything positive about the All-Star, just the game itself, the All-Star game itself?
It's the thing that I always say, and it's a backhanded compliment, but the All-Star game is the chance to see all of these luminary players, these Hall of Famers. Almost all of them will be in the Hall of Fame on the same court together, and to go, oh, it's super cool that LeBron James is throwing a pass to Kevin Durant who knocked down a shot. Like, I don't get to see that anywhere else besides my imagination and 2K. Like, those are the only places you ever get to see it, or maybe the Olympics, right? So that's the positive out of it. Full stop.
I had a friend text me on Monday, and we're actually recording this and posting it earlier than we usually do during the week. It's the All-Star week. Nothing's playing till Thursday or Friday night anyway, so we got some time. And we will talk about what's going into the second half of the season. What are we looking forward to? But
yeah, let's do that.
I had a friend that texted me and asked me, like, hey, is this fun for you? Like, he knows I'm an NBA guy, and he knows I like to watch my Knicks and watch some of these guys. And I texted back, no. This isn't fun for me. Like, I saw a screenshot in 2001. The East beat the West. I think it was 111 to 110. Right? It was a super competitive and at the time high scoring game. I think Allen Iverson may have been the MVP for that. It doesn't really matter at this point. And you sort of juxtapose that to the fact that the East almost scored as many points as that game had total, which is.
And the East scored almost their total number of points from the game in the first half of this one, right?
It was like none of that's fun for me, and I don't like. So they go to this modified giant football stadium to have this basketball event, and then you have, whatever it is. If you like the Celebrity All-Star game, fine. I don't.
Which I don't. We talked about that last week way too much and both left feeling icky from it.
If you like the skills challenge, If you like the 3-point contest, which it was kind of nice to have a little bit of a twist with the Curry versus an SQ thing. That was an interesting little twist. Not enough to draw me in for the full night of activity.
No, but they put on a good show. And I mean, the fact that she knocked down as many shots in her one round as what it took to be able to advance out of the men's round, and was essentially at the same point that the winner got, it shows again the shooting prowess. That was fun.
Yeah, and the slam dunk contests always never delivers, although you got a guy who's not in the league who ends up winning the thing.
I thought this year's slam dunk contest, not to get too far off track, was decent. Like, there was nothing wrong with this one. There was some things I had never seen before, which is rare.
But it's 1,000% comparative, right? Like, it's compared to what we've had like the last decade. You've had like a dunk maybe or two, but that's a 2.5 hour, 3 hour contest.
Yeah,
to get one of those things made.
But if you can jump over Shaq without a push off, and throw down a reverse dunk, I've never seen that before. There's always a push off. There's always the secret little hand push off. It was not there. And the little double clutch, catch the ball in the air while it's a party trick for sure. Never seen it before. Never seen it.
Okay.
Like,
All right. Fair
uh,
enough. But you don't watch
I'll-
enough of my 2K custom edition stuff that I do. But like all of that culminated with just I don't even know what like the most supreme example for me. And I'll tell you my most favorite thing. I'm leading into this of the entire weekend was the fact that you had Luka Doncic and Nikola Jokic just hamming it up to each other and just giving each other crap every single event that they were at and having a lot of fun with it.
Mhm.
But when you watch Jokic and Luka just pass it back and forth the entire trip down, no one taking a dribble, just running the entire court, taking 2 and 3 steps apiece. It epitomizes what that game is, which is yes, it's always been an exhibition. And yes,
Yes.
we have really lost the ability to sort of have it to be competitive and fun, no matter how many kinds of twists and turns you kind of do with it. But I don't know what you're supposed to do with this thing. If you're insistent on having it in the middle of the season,
Mhm.
if you're insistent upon having the fans vote for their favorite players because that's who they want to see and why not? I don't know for those who want a better product, and I really do,
Mhm.
but I don't know what you do because for me, first and foremost, there's way too much money in the NBA for these guys to even get close to caring about going full bore. No matter how much Adam Silver, which I loved at the end being like, hey, the East, you scored the most. Congratulations for that. Which is how we all sort of felt like, hooray.
Yeah.
I don't no matter how much Adam Silver puts for incentives, like it's just not gonna be enough for these guys who are the all-stars, who are making already the elite money,
Mhm.
for them to really care to be that quote unquote competitive for 4 quarters.
There's a bigger subtext here. I mean, we could get into we could make this into a master's class, university class, about capitalism and employees working for the owner. But let's zoom back out and take the really simplistic view of all that. If I'm working for a job and I'm showing up, I'm doing exactly what I need to do to get my paycheck. And there are times that I work a little bit harder. Yep. And there's times that I maybe even it out by working a little bit less, but I show up and I do my job. I'm a good employee. Am I going to show up and do something to work extra hard, maybe put myself in danger in some way or put my future earnings at this company in some way for something that maybe the owners are telling me, hey, it'll improve the visibility of our company. It's going to improve the overall health of our company. It's going to make our customers happy. But really, I know deep down, all of those things that may be true, and I may help achieve that goal. But who's going to get paid from that? Not me, the owner of the company.
Right.
The owner will make all that money. So that's really what this comes down to is, the players have said, look, it is what it is, but none of us are going to go out there and get hurt. Our team, we're from the best teams typically, the best teams in each conference. These guys are critical to the playoff hopes of their teams, the championship hopes of their teams. There is a lot more money and a lot more prestige and a lot more job security running on being available for the rest of the season and those games, the ones that really matter, than to go out and try to pimp up the product of the all-star game that everyone's going to be disappointed with anyway, no matter what you do. Although people have a right to be disappointed with the last couple of years, especially. But okay, so I do a great job with that and I get hurt. Do you think that my franchise 2 years from now, when I'm still not right, still not healthy, is going to go, you know what? We're going to keep you re-signed. We're not going to sell you down the river for glue because, you really tried in that all-star game and we feel bad about that. I think the big eye-opener with all of this is Isaiah Thomas, Sacramento Kings guard turned Boston Celtics guard, having a phenomenal season a few years ago, all-star, doing it all, gets hurt, rehabs. The Celtics say all the right things. Did they hesitate for even a split second to ship him off when they could get Kyrie Irving? They ship him off to the Cavaliers. He's never the same player again as Isaiah Thomas. He's out of the league now. He's tried to come back multiple times. Guys look at that and then they know that the franchises can say all they want. The league can say all it wants about the product. and the players go, I am the product. And if I'm not there, I'm no longer a product to you because that's what you see me as, not as a person. The product is gone. I'm tainted. You'll find a new product. So they're protecting themselves. And anybody who truly deep down has a problem with that is full of crap because you know how you behave at your own job when you're being asked to do way more and maybe even to put your earnings in jeopardy. None of us are showing up for that.
Can I tell you the weird thing in all of this? The ratings were up. The ratings came out earlier today. The ratings are up. It was the most watched NBA All-Star Saturday in 4 years. The ratings were up 20% for Sunday night. But no one seems to have any excitement or joy coming out of that game. And it's not just social media, and it's not just the talking heads. Like, you and I aren't talking heads, and we're not huge on social media at this point. We're guys that, I don't know.
We love the NBA. We love the product.
I'm not trying to be one of those, hey, super old-timey guys, right? Like, you and I constantly talk about how there's really good teams playing really good defense. Now we just assume everybody's scoring 150 points a game. And yes, the Pacers are doing that.
We are not crass traditionalists, or with some subtext that the game was better when it was whiter or something like that. No, like we love the game. We love the iterations of the game, and we have respect for all of the different eras of the game and the players. And I think you and I do a great job of finding like the best out of what we can in all of these.
So how do we square that? How we feel about the game? And granted, we also are guys that are fine with the 3 points. The 3-point proficiency has come up. It's made games a lot of fun to be able to watch too. How do we square how we feel about the game, which I didn't ask you, but I could tell from your tone you weren't a huge fan of it. Like, it wasn't the most enjoyable experience for you.
I anybody who walked out disappointed, I get it. I understand. I'm not faulting you for being disappointed, like I don't know what else you expected, but I don't fault you for being disappointed.
How do we square the fact that still got us seeing an increase in ratings, despite the fact that everyone that watched, who has at least spoken up about it, has had sour things? I literally haven't heard one person, and I have a good friend group that does like the NBA. Not one person has been like, that was fun. We text a little bit about Max McClung dunk and stuff like that, but like, no one was like, for the game itself, especially, like, it was really cool.
Despite a light up court and all the other shenanigans.
Yeah, right? Listen, maybe that's what got the ratings up. People are like, "Ooh, the court's gonna light up." In the Celebrity All-Star
things.
The Celebrity All-Star game 3-point line can move. It give you a 4-point line that goes back and forth. You never know in the fourth quarter where it will be. Like, I don't know how to square with the fact that I hated the All-Star game, and more people watched it than ever. It's still no one's been like, that was fun.
Did it make any difference to you whatsoever that it was East versus West versus captains picking? Like, in the grand scheme of once you got into the game, did any of that matter?
I preferred East versus West, but like, to me, it did. Like, it wasn't going to keep me from watching it or watching it even more intently. Like, to me, like, there's so much movement among the players, two teams anyway. They're like, whether Giannis and LeBron are picking for the 50th straight year for their favorite team, or whether or not it's going to be East versus West, like, it's, I don't feel like there's a huge loyalty to a conference anyway at that point. But I do prefer East versus West for tradition's sake. But
try on this idea for size, and this just came to me as we're talking now. This was not pre-prepped, even though I knew we were going to talk about this topic, but it just came to me right now. The NBA cannot sit there and say, we're protecting the sanctity of this game and the number of players in by having only 12 guys on each roster because XYZ. And they'll play that game. That's what Adam Silver said. He's like, well, the players like it when it's a smaller number. Do they? You're always leaving 3 or 4 guys off of each conference that have as much of a case to be there as anybody else, but they're oftentimes penalized by being in a smaller market. What if we expand the rosters on either side to 15? So we've got 30 total players. And really, we might have to, in order to make this work, we probably have to expand it to 32 players total. So 16 for each team, each conference. but we split them up into 4 teams of 8, and we play a little mini tournament, and the winners out of the East advance to the winners out of the West, and you play that, and so you have a little bit more. And what do you have riding on it? You have actually winning games to advance. You have the pride aspect of it. And when you still get into the all-star like championship game, what does it really mean? Well, that's up to the NBA to maybe sweeten the pot a little bit for the players, not for the teams, not for the product. Sweeten it for the players in a selfish way, but you can always throw like a charitable match of dollars or something on top of it to make it be a little altruistic. But give me a longer game, because we've got tournament play like this. Give me 8 players per roster, so you get subs in there. We see a few extra guys, and we turn it into the little mini all-star tournament. That I'll tune in for that next year. I'll tune into that for the next 5 to 7 years, and really, that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, because the NBA is constantly experimenting with stuff. I mean, the in-season tournament is the huge example for that. The LED court for whatever reason. The they're having LeBron and Giannis pick players for this. I think if you're going to have popularity but God, this is why I'm so speechless for this. Like, I don't know what to do with it, because I love your idea, but the NBA's sitting there looking at the ratings like, why would we change? Like, if our ratings are up, despite the fact that Adam Silver clearly wanted more effort, right? And you could tell that like he wasn't,
because the
excited.
ratings being up may be a short-term gain, long-term loss, and I don't think the NBA is stupid enough to not see that.
I'm not saying that they are, but
given what's swirling around.
But the fact that they did make some changes, like East going to West, so on and so forth, like it clearly, it depends on what the NBA looks at as far as the metric that they think moved the needle. Was it the move in the East versus West? So they need to maybe just make little tweaks to try to get a little bit more effort. I feel like the effort didn't really matter that much, unless all of the negative attention you got from the 211 to 187 or whatever it was game, unless that goes into next year's game where people are like, okay, that was the tipping point. I don't want to watch a 200-point game, even though we kept getting closer and closer to it. Maybe they're like, look, you got the 200. I don't want to be a part of this. That maybe they got a bunch of people to watch the newly revamped All-Star game, and they tuned in and then said, nah, no more. Then maybe at that point you look at blowing it up, because I'm with you. Look, the NFL Pro Bowl numbers, they're like, they actually did about the same amount of numbers, like 5.5 million people sort of watch, which is great, right? But
especially considering where the Pro Bowl was, like
right,
really in trouble too, not so long ago.
But they completely changed their format. They basically said, we're not getting effort in the football game itself, so let's change it. So their All-Star Pro Bowl games got like 5.5 million people to be able to watch. NBA All-Star game got about 5.5 million people to watch, which is a phenomenal thing for the NBA, because everyone's always trying to compare the two, and they're just apples and pomegranates at that point. So if you're the NBA, do you consider then doing something like you're talking about, blowing it up entirely? Because you're already doing a skills challenge that apparently enough people like. So what else are you going to be able to do? The in-season tournament got a lot of publicity, I think, because and a lot of people really cared about it as far as the players, because people like tournaments.
And there's bragging rights associated with it.
There's competition. There's clearly some money. There's stakes in it for just about everybody. That if you
the stakes weren't even that good yet this year. To agree with your point, you and I both said the stakes need to be higher, but you seem to be on the right track with this.
Yeah, so maybe a little mini tournament for the entire evening. You're already there for 3 hours anyway. Like, you're going to go to these big.
Yeah, you're not going to play a full 48 minutes for both games.
You basically make like, maybe you make maybe like you have one quarter for each part of the bracket or something like that. Or I don't know. Depends on how many teams you decide to figure out, right? If you get 4 8-man teams, right? So the 4 teams could play, in the first 2, right, of your quarters. You have the halftime for everybody to be able to rest. And then maybe the second half, you start to figure out the championship and the consolation game, right? I don't know. Maybe that might work. It might be somewhat intriguing just because there's competition sort of in it. But again, how much I heard Michael Wilbon, ESPN thing. He has been on this wagon for years. He says if you want to make the All-Star game mean something, make it United States versus the world.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get bragging rights into it. Then you get people who are like patriotic about it. Like, hey, my guys and Kevin Durant and LeBron and stuff, they're going to beat Luka and they're going to beat Nikola and they're going to be all these guys. Dario, they're going to be all Dario. That's right. I said it. They're going to be Bogdan. They're going to beat him. Maybe you introduce an element of that. Like we used to have something like that leading up to the All-Star game, basically. Maybe
the problem is with the voting and the nominees then for the reserves is you won't have an even number on either side, and so you'd be penalizing the lower. Once again, it's the guys at the end of the list on the fringe of the All-Star who are going to either get penalized or a bonus depending on what nationality they are and what deficiency you have in the roster to try to even it out. That's the main concern I would have with that. I'm not against the idea.
Yeah, I'm not against the idea either. I'm for throwing in some xenophobia in this. I like that. I like being able to hate other countries.
Arky Shea from Alabama, everybody.
First of all, let's not act like we're better than that. I don't know, man. Like to me, there could be a revamp, and maybe that's the more subtle way to do it than to turn it into like a mini tournament at the beginning. And I'd be okay with watching that because I would love to sort of see these guys. But also thinking we need to move on at some point because the All-Star game issues are going to be prevalent for a while. Like it's just you're 50 games in a season. How much effort are you going to get for guys who still have 30 games and they still want to be able to sort of try to make the end run to win a world championship? So
and here's the thing: beyond the score, what really stood out to me. This will be my last point. Beyond the score, because that's what everybody has hung up on. But you played a full 48 minutes. You scored nearly 350 points. The Western Conference All-Stars were called for 2 personal fouls the entire game. The Eastern Conference All-Stars were called for 1 personal foul the entire game. Nobody should be hacking or playing dirty in an All-Star game. Absolutely not. But there you see that like there's no even attempt at defense. But we do say like, oh, I wish I could see LeBron James in a dunk contest. Why won't LeBron do a dunk contest? You know what? He is. He's in a dunk contest. It's called the All-Star Game. There's quasi in-game dunks. That's kind of cool. You do get to see him in a dunk contest with all the other stars.
This is not
not a game.
This is not a novel argument, but like the level of creativity in games in the season, off the backboards, behind the back, the stuff you would think would be dunk contest worthy, is happening in the middle of February. In the games leading up to this. Like there's just the novelty of being able to have all of these guys because I'll tell you this. I've watched Wembanyama play like 6 games. You know, like I couldn't do that back when the All-Star game was like, you know, the thing you can only see everybody once every now and then. ESPN, ABC, TNT have all given us the ability to watch a lot more high quality star powers than we've sort of ever had. So it's not as special. It's still special to have them all on the court at the same time.
Right.
There's
Plus, you see them all over social media. You know, every highlight that you want, you're going to see that guy.
My timeline is littered with highlights every single night. Is highlights. So what's so special about a highlight for 2.5 hours? You know, it's sort of interesting to sort of pay attention to if the NBA wants to tweak this at all, or if they look at the ratings. And I think Adam Silver wanted to do something, even though the ratings were up. He seemed genuinely disgusted by the fact that it was 211 points scored by one of the sides.
And you don't see him publicly annoyed very often. You would see it like every single day with David Stern, right? David Stern was just perpetually pissed all the time. He wore that on his sleeve. Adam Silver is much more political, and much more like image driven, and I think in a good way. He also seems a little more even keeled and like objective about certain things. So to see him annoyed on national TV, that's a big deal. That's like saying Arky Shea's at a loss for words. You know, it's a big deal.
Yeah, like it literally was like, I cannot hide this anymore. Congratulations.
I will speak my truth.
Wow. So I guess one of you has to have this trophy, right? Mercy. I don't want to be a part of this. All right, let's move forward for the last several minutes we have here. I want to ask you about one thing and then sort of some thoughts going into the beginning of the season. first of all, we can talk about Kevin Ollie being promoted as the
Mhm.
Nets interim coach. The Nets aren't good. I don't think it's sort of a huge deal at this point. But I wanted to ask you about a certain team you may know. Re-up of Mike Conley Jr. He was going to be a free agent at the end of this year. Now he is going to be signed up for this
Mhm.
year and the next 2 years afterwards. He's quite a nice season for your guys. So, a couple of quick moments on the re-upping of Mike Conley, not even letting him get to the test of free agent
Mhm.
markets.
I think it's a sign of respect. I think it's a
Yeah.
sign to the rest of the roster that like this is our window. We are committed to this. Everybody likes Mike everywhere he's ever played. The fans love him. His teammates love him. He is just one of those guys. He is a glue guy on and off the court. He has been nothing but a pros pro for Minnesota. Anthony Edwards loves the guy, and Anthony Edwards has played with some point guards that he loves. He loved Patrick Beverley. He loved Ricky Rubio. He is still good friends with Rubio. He's had a lot of
Oh,
mentors
I
from
don't
that.
think I knew that. They're good pals.
Yeah, him and Rubio were really, really close, and he
Oh.
credits Ricky Rubio, especially for his rookie season, for showing him the ropes. And he credits Pat Bev for coming in and adding that edge and showing him what it would take to really get under people's skin and go after people. And with Mike, it's been that like brotherly relationship with this guy is my big brother. He's got my back. He's been around the block a million times. He is all about winning. He's all about the team. That's all that matters. And Anthony Edwards has soaked up, I think, those different lessons from those different point guards like a sponge. Anthony Edwards was arguably at his worst when playing with D'Angelo Russell as a point guard. And that's no knock on D'Lo, who brings a lot of great things to the table. But as a gunner and as somebody who's inconsistent and oftentimes falls into doing things his own way, you saw Anthony Edwards mimicking that just a little bit too, especially last year as they struggled. So Mike being in the locker room and on the floor is great. Is this going to be his retirement package? It might be. I don't see Mike Conley as a guy who's going to hang around long after his sell-by date. I think he'll go into coaching. I think he'll be a really good coach like Jacque Vaughn, like Kevin Ollie, like a lot of these point guards who maybe weren't perennial all-stars, but they show up and they know the game. They know how to communicate. They were good dudes. You know, Ty Lue, when they played, guys like that, they'll be successful. And I think Mike Conley's in line to be somebody like that, either at the college level or the NBA level. Is he going to be the long-term starter for the next 3 years in Minnesota, 2 years, whatever? That I don't know. I think he'll probably be the starter in name, and the minutes are going to continue to go down. This might be the last year for him where he is a big-minute guy. They are very clearly and successfully grooming Nickeil Alexander-Walker to be, I think, the starting backcourt mate with Anthony Edwards over the long term of this window. And they want Anthony Edwards to be the prototypical Jordan type of scoring guard who also is a great defender. They want Alexander Walker to play the Ron Harper role, where he is a big, lanky guard who is defense first, and that's what Walker has turned into, but can knock down a shot, has the chops to chip in some points along the way, but just gives you another big body in the backcourt. And they've been working on that all year. It's really, really obvious. That's going to keep happening. And I think that Mike will start for as long as you can do that with a straight face. And then it's going to be Alexander Walker after that. And that's fine. Like, I think Mike Conley is one of those guys who will be fine coming off the bench if he's helping his team win. And that may be 2 years down the road yet. But this is a good move. I think it's as much a signal to the rest of the guys on the team and the organization that says, this is about winning. And we're into it now. So the stakes are high. You're either here to win or you're not.
I think it's interesting that you compared him in his potential coaching role to the recently fired Jacque Vaughn and the replacement for Jacque Vaughn and Kevin Ollie. Both
they're both good coaches.
You think Jacque Vaughn's a better coach than Kevin Ollie than Mike Conley? Rank them real quick. 1, 2, 3. Better coaches: Jacque Vaughn, Mike Conley Jr., and Kevin Ollie.
Jacque Vaughn, Kevin Ollie, Mike Conley in that order, because Jacque Vaughn has coached at the NBA level now for a while, both as an interim, as an assistant, as a head coach. Kevin Ollie's been a very good college coach, and he's going to get his chance at the NBA. We know it doesn't always translate up, but it is a big sign when a guy like Kevin Ollie, who is very successful collegiately, is willing to take the assistant job and learn the ropes, even though he played in the NBA for like a decade, but to come back, learn the ropes that way and not be like, no, I've had such a successful college program, I couldn't possibly do anything less than be the head coach and the president of basketball operations for your team. There are college coaches like that out there, many of them. And those are the guys that typically flame out the hardest.
Oh, you
Mike
mean like
Conley,
Rick Pitino, John Calipari, stuff like that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Those were the two I was exactly thinking of, and then to a lesser extent, like John Beeline, and guys like that have come in and flamed out hard. The former coach.
Was John Beeline, was he a president of basketball operations too?
Not with the Cavs, no.
Okay.
But
Like,
he did get a big sweetheart deal when they sweetheart deal when they brought him in.
Okay.
All
right. Yeah. Well, let's spend the last few minutes talking about the future of the NBA, and I mean LED courts for everyone. Actually, the second half of the season, which is laughable because like the Celtics are 55 games in, halfway is 41,
it's the last third of the season.
Whatever. Okay. Projection wise, the first team I wanted to ask you about, and then I actually only want to ask you about one or two teams, and then sort of get you to sort of predict what you think big story might happen the rest of the way. Mm-hmm. Milwaukee right now is the 3 seed. Milwaukee is 8.5 games back, but since Mr. Doc Rivers has been the guy, they've been terrible. And I mean, on the court, okay. But
fire him and bring Adrian Griffin back.
But wins and losses, they have been disgusting. So let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. Do you think Milwaukee sinks further by the time we get into the playoffs? Do you think Doc Rivers was that big of a detriment in upsetting the momentum that Milwaukee had, even though some of the players may not have loved the momentum, they were still riding pretty high? Or do you think they just need more time with Doc and his coaching, that they will get the ship rewrite? It's not like they added a bunch of new players. They just changed the coach.
I believe that the Cleveland Cavaliers are not the long-term second seed in the Eastern Conference. I think it will either be the Bucks or the Knicks. The Knicks have more momentum, but the injury problems. The Bucks have a healthier roster right now, but as you said, all that stuff to figure out. And so if the Bucks do fall, it's not going to be far. It would be down into the 4th seed. And I think Cleveland is probably going to be at the end of this season sitting in the 3rd or 4th seed. Strong team, but they're going to benefit from the fact that Philly now is right back to having Joel Embiid injury issues. And Indiana, as good as they've been, not a good defensive team and is probably still 1 or 2 years away from like really being a true contender. Miami doesn't have the firepower, although, getting DeLon Wright and they've added some pieces here, Terry Rozier and so forth. They're going to keep tinkering and they'll be in the hunt. But yeah, so I think Milwaukee, they could fall, but it won't be far. I think they have just as much of a chance to bump up into that 2nd seed, although it kind of feels like if New York can just get healthy, it'll maybe be the Knicks.
All right, then let me ask you about one team in the West. That's the Golden State Warriors. They're 2.5 games up for the play-in at the 10th seed at this point. And they had to win 8 of their last 10 just to get there at this point, to get to the number 10 spot. So Golden State, we still both feel fairly confident they're making it into the playoffs.
The play-in, at least.
Sorry, the play-in part of the playoffs. I count it all as playoffs technically, but that's just the way I look at it. Is this team capable of not making the play-in? 29 games left.
If you have an injury to Steph, absolutely.
Let's just say they're healthy as they are right now. They keep what it is, right? I mean, they benched Clay the other night, right? And he came off and then he had like 35 points or something coming off the bench. So, like it's not as if it's been a ton of injuries. It's sort of the same thing this year.
They're 8-2 in their last 10 games.
Yeah. So that got them up to the 10 spot, right? Like they've been flirting with that 9, 10, 11 seed spot for the last, for the most of the season. So what is this team capable of not making the playoffs this year?
Only if they start to sink again and Houston gets hot. Because you look at the teams underneath them now, and I think the West and the East have both sorted out generally into about exactly how we thought it would go, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions here or there in the ordering of the standings. And maybe in each conference, there's one team hanging out there. In the West, it's Dallas. in the East, it's probably Chicago, where you go, man, I didn't actually see them being up this far. There's still time for them to drop out, but I didn't see them doing it, and it looks like they maybe have some staying power. Utah, I don't think actually wants to win. Just like they got to this point last year.
Why
where
are they winning then? Like they're so
because they're well coached and it's a decent roster, but they're still trying to add to the roster. Yeah, they can't help it. But they know that they still need to add more talent, and the only way to do that in Utah is through the draft. You won't get free agents. It's hard to do with trades. Memphis, Portland, San Antonio, not only do they probably not want to win, but they're not capable of winning enough to threaten. Houston was supposed to be winning more than this. They are gunning for a play-in spot. They've had some injuries. They've had some inconsistency. They're still young, especially their young players like Jalen Green and Jabari Smith, guys like that. Amen Thompson. They struggle with their consistency big time. But they're supposed to be in the hunt, and they'll continue to push. So Golden State doesn't have a lot of competition if you only have one team underneath you nipping at your heels. But you look at all the other teams above them, Dallas, Sacramento, the Lakers, maybe even the Pelicans by default because they're sitting in the 6th seat. Out of those teams, can you really see anybody where the bottom is going to fall out? Or likely to, barring it all comes down to injury, right? It would be major injury to one of those, and Golden State, continuing to win, and then Houston gets in. So I think really the only major threat here, if all things remain equal, the Warriors not shooting themselves in the foot, not having Draymond miss any more time. Clay's got to find something. Andrew Wiggins has got to find something. Like, come on, be productive a little bit. They've got to find that, and they got to hope that Houston doesn't go on a tear because everybody matured over the All-Star break when they were in Cabo, which is a great place to mature, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. You spend a handful of days in Cabo, and all of a sudden, boom, you're like, I'm 2 extra years in the league. I got that under my belt, and I feel it.
You get that Rockets banana boat going, you get Ubuntu going, and all of a sudden, you're in the championship game.
I'm not as down on Utah after I've watched them this year as you are, as far as not wanting to win. Right? They are well coached. I think they could come.
They got some pieces.
I was really low on them going into the season. I thought they could be the worst team in the West, but
you did, yeah.
The coaching is not allowing them to be the worst team in the West, and that's, to me, surprising. I think Houston and Utah are both real threats to Golden State, because
both are 3-7 in their last 10 games, whatever that means.
But I'll tell you this: Utah before they lost four in a row. They had beaten, excuse me, I didn't have time to use my mic. They had beaten Milwaukee. Like, they had beaten Milwaukee, and I don't know, they beat another really good team right before that. I
think they beat the Lakers in there. Maybe not in that stretch, but it was recently.
I'm trying to think. It was.
I can go and look at their schedule.
Yeah. No, did I say Milwaukee? It was Milwaukee and somebody else that was a good team that they beat. I don't know. But anyway, so for me, I think that there is
Oklahoma City. They beat Oklahoma City, a couple nights after beating Milwaukee.
Yeah. So I think Utah is a real threat, and I think Houston is also a real threat. I think Houston's pretty well coached. A lot of it's youth and trying to get some of that, as you say, maturity under the belt. I think,
and a lot of new pieces, Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks and Jeff Green. There's a lot of new veterans that are going to fit in first year there too.
I think to me in my head, I think there's a 40% chance they don't make the playoffs.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're only like 2.5.
You've been kind of down on them all year, though. I mean, to be fair.
But not to miss the playoffs. Like, I thought they would be in like the 9-10 area. But like, I did not think that they would just be this, I wouldn't even say hot and cold. They're just cool and cold, like kind of warm at times, cold. Never really putting together any stretch of really good basketball for a week or two at a time. Just sort of all over the place. But I don't know. Which, by the way, would be the I think official end of the dynasty if they didn't make the playoffs, because they're not coming back next year, especially if they make the playoffs and winning the title. They're not winning the title this year. Like, they're done as far as that dynasty is concerned. They're 14-14 at home. Like, at home. I don't know. All right, Joel. Going forward, give me a team to watch out for, or a headline to pay attention to. Do you think for the last half of the season, as we get to the last 28, 29, 30, 31 games for everybody?
Watch what happens to the Oklahoma City Thunder as a bellwether for how much of a threat they are or are not in the Western Conference. If they drop 2 to 3 seeds here, which is kind of what I think is going to happen, because youth is going to catch up as some of these really good veteran teams in the Western Conference now kick it into high gear. If they drop 2 to 3 seeds, they're not a threat yet this year, but they're coming next year, and we all know that, and we all got to be real scared. They're going to take their lumps. But if they somehow stick around in the second seed the rest of the year, maybe even overtake Minnesota, they're a game and a half back for that number 1 seed, they are not only a legit threat because of that regular season standing, they're a legit threat to make it to an NBA Finals already this young, and with shades of the Kevin Durant, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka Thunder from yesteryear, Jeff Green on that team too, where they were just loaded with young talent and all of a sudden matured way faster than everybody thought, and they were like, oh crap, we can't hang with these guys. So that's a team that I'm really intrigued with. Everybody else, it's almost always for these veteran teams. Now it's who gets healthy in time, not just in time to have your guy be able to suit up for the first playoff game. Yeah, that's important. But do you get healthy with 10, 15 games left to go in the regular season to reintegrate a Julius Randle or a Mitchell Robinson, speaking about the Knicks, or a Joel Embiid with the Sixers? Like, yeah, you've played with those guys before, but when they're out for a long period of time, the team changes, the chemistry adjusts, different guys had to step up, roles changed, they morphed, and now you're suddenly asking everybody else to go back to what they were doing before, some of which they may not want to do as they've taken on bigger roles, and you're asking a guy who's rusty to come into, and maybe even still recovering, to come into this new chemistry makeup, and it's a lot more difficult than you think. And so the teams that get healthiest the fastest, especially these veteran teams that are actually in the hunt, those are the ones to watch out for. I don't really have like a low lurking team where it's like,
one.
I mean, maybe it's Miami, but
not Miami. I got one, but it's not Miami.
All right. Who you got?
Watch out for the Orlando Magic.
Okay.
They are in the 8th spot right now. I think they could sneak their way into a 4 seed.
Wow. Point. Okay.
Well, listen, it's not just about how good they are, because they are pretty good. They are a pretty talented team. But their final 25 or so games, really easy.
They're only 3 games out, by the way, too. Of
3 games out of the 4 spot?
Or the 4 spot, yep.
Listen to this schedule right out the gate for when they start back on Thursday. Now, they have the Cavs, but after that, Pistons, Hawks, Nets, Jazz, Pistons, Hornets, Wizards. Then it's the Knicks and Pacers. Then it's the Nets, Raptors, Hornets, Pelicans. Like, they could go on a run. I just hear
Ron Burgundy screaming, "What is this, amateur hour?" in the background.
They could go on a run right out the gate, and they could find themselves within a couple of a game or two of a 4 seed after the next week or two. Well, I guess we're Tuesday, so maybe after 2 weeks, they have a real chance to make a really big inroad at the very beginning of this stretch run. And then, you know what it is? It's health, and it's the momentum you have going into the playoffs, right? If they're playing like they are on fire, they're going to be hard to beat momentum-wise. Like, I'm not saying that they're going to win a bunch of rounds. I'm not saying they're going to win the East.
But play a spoiler. Yeah.
But they could be a big spoiler. They could be hosting. I think at that 4 spot, I think it's very, very doable. That schedule, it's right there in front of them. I haven't done the math on it, but it's got to be one of the easiest for 10-game stretches to come out of the All-Star break out there, if not the easiest.
To choose a spoiler in the West, it's a team in a similar situation, but I don't know their schedule, and I'm not going to dig into everything there. But the one team that really scares me as a wild card, because I do think they're capable of beating anyone on any given night, and that could mess up seeding along the way. I do think they're capable of winning a round in the playoffs as well, though we saw during the NBA Cup, maybe them get exposed a little bit in that championship round. The New Orleans Pelicans, if healthy, are young but veteran, well coached, also have been together as a core now for a bit, even though they haven't all played together all the time because of those health issues. But when you actually watch them play, like Oklahoma City, they cause massive problems with their athleticism, with the sheer size of their roster, especially in that starting lineup, and the fact that they just bring waves of energy guys off the bench who have a pretty decent head about them. It's not just, chicken with the head cut off energy. It's they fill a role, and they've got a lot of different looks they can get to that bench. And now that they're pretty healthy, like OKC, we had concerns about both of those teams' young benches. But the starting lineups being intact and being healthy means that those young guys are not overexposed, and in both cases, well-coached teams where the guys have matured a little bit faster than we thought they would and look ready. New Orleans could be that Orlando type of spoiler in the West, I think, too.
Here's New Orleans' schedule starting Thursday. Rockets, Heat, Bulls, Knicks, Pacers, Raptors, 76ers.
Not easy. Doable, but not easy.
Not as easy as Orlando.
Yeah, but doable.
But very doable. And they wrap up. I'm trying to see there because they still have the Bucks, OKC on the schedule. OKC's only there one more time. The Celtics are still on the schedule. Yeah, they don't have a bunch of easy games. The Clippers are still on the schedule once.
They're done with Minnesota for the year. They've already gotten their 4 matchups in with them, I think. So,
how did they go? Did you split? Who got it?
I think I have to go back and look. I think Minnesota was 3-1 out of those, but they may have split because New Orleans is a team that no matter how poor they've been, like injury wise, they've played the Wolves tough over the last couple of years. That's been a difficult matchup for both teams. I'm going to look through.
Hey, Joel, if you guys aren't on Herb Jones, get on Herb Jones.
Oh, already there, man.
Okay.
Minnesota beat them in November. Minnesota lost to them at the beginning of December. Minnesota lost to them at the beginning of January. And did they only play them 3 times this year? I guess lucky for them, they only play them 3 times. So yeah, they went 1-2 against New Orleans.
I believe you. All right, so that's going to do it for us. The second half of the season is still 2 days away, so we still got to wait for the basketball to happen. It feels like forever since we've seen a meaningful, fun basketball game.
It's okay. Once again, we've solved all the league's problems. We did it again.
And there's some good games. Houston, New Orleans is the first game back. The Clippers and the Thunder first game back. Boston and Chicago first game back. New York, Philadelphia is first game back. Orlando, Cleveland's first game back. Of course, the one I'm going to be watching the most is Detroit at Indiana. That's the first night back. So it'll be huge on the Pacers to score their own 211 points in that game against Detroit. Actually, that'd probably be against the Wizards, to be honest with you. That would happen. But to be fair, by the way, the East has 2 teams that still haven't won 10 games. What ifs, guys? You guys are terrible. All right. Joel, that's going to do it for us. This podcast is over. When we come back, the Knicks will have to overtaken the Cavs for the 2nd seed, and Joel's Minnesota Timberwolves will be 1st seed with a bullet. Isn't that going to be fun?
Let it be written, let it be done.
That's right. From our mouth to God's ears. Joel, say goodbye to the good people.
Goodbye, good people. We'll do it again. You can catch us Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes for the audio only version, YouTube for the video version. Like, share, subscribe, do all those good things. We'll see you next time.